Hello, I'm Margaret Willis, and I'm the president of the Board of Directors of Sharing Hope Ministry. I want to thank you for joining this shortened online presentation of Hope Fest 2021. If you are a regular supporter of this ministry, you know that Hope Fest is typically a time we gather in person to celebrate all the things that God has done in the ministry throughout the year, as well as raise money for what He will do in the future. However, 2021, like 2020, is a little different. Our board of directors made the difficult decision to transition from an in-person Hope Fest to an online presentation. We wanted to put the safety of our community, especially our medical community, ahead of any fundraising efforts. So again, I thank you for joining us tonight. Canceling a fundraiser for 2 years is a hard decision for any nonprofit to make. However, for more than 20 years, the leaders of Sharing Hope, our board, our staff, and our volunteers have trusted God in this ministry. He came through in a big way for us last year, and we anticipate that He will do the same this year. God has blessed us with incredible donors and supporters who have been behind us for years, and some have just recently jumped on board. We trust that they will be generous this year as they have been in the past and continue to support the efforts that we need. I'm going to spend a few minutes sharing exactly what Sharing Hope does, so you can get a better picture of the ministry and the work that God is doing through Sharing Hope. I also encourage you to check out the Patsy's Place presentation, which you can link to on our website. The participants at Patsy's Place put an awful lot of time and effort into this presentation, and it helps understand how God is rewriting their stories by being here at Patsy's Place. Thank you for being here. God has created a beautiful story through Sharing Hope Ministry. The first chapters of the ministry were full of trust and obedience as a few answered Bible requests bloomed into a ministry that now has provided 244,000 Life Recovery Bibles and Bible studies to women across the United States. Our materials have been sent into over 700 correctional and addiction rehabilitation facilities, and an average of 1,000 women every month are served through this ministry. Even though our local jails were closed to our teaching teams for most of 2020 and 2021, we continue to ensure that women in those jails received Life Recovery Bibles. We also have an online prayer team that prays and corresponds with incarcerated and at-risk women, and a pandemic cannot stop the intercessory prayers of God's faithful. Our core strength at Sharing Hope is in our volunteers who cross church lines to work together to introduce women to Christ. Each volunteer shares the same story of Christ's love and the hope that is abundant through Him. God added a new chapter to our ministry story in 2011 when Patsy's Place Transitional Home was first opened. We created a Christ-centered program that varies in length from 4 months to 1 year, depending on the specific needs and goals of the participant. The program at Patsy's Place works holistically to heal, educate, and support women who are leaving incarceration and returning to our community. Since we opened, 154 women entered our program. Some received emergency shelter, while others have stayed to receive their certificate of completion or have graduated. While in our program, the women work to repair their family relationships, to learn financial skills, and to accomplish goals like getting a job and completing their education. They work with mentors and coaches and spend time strengthening their personal relationships with Christ. These ladies rejoin our community as strong, self-sufficient women whose motivation to succeed is not due to fear of incarceration, but is because she has started a new chapter of her story where she has relinquished control to Christ. Our graduates are successful. Our recidivism or reincarceration rate is a low 13.5% compared to a national average of nearly 70%. Our program works. In fact, many of our graduates give back to the ministry through their service and financial support. We are proud of the 10 graduates who have been on staff and have worked to help the next generation of women navigate this transition. We currently have 3 graduates in leadership positions within the ministry. In 2017, God provided a surprise chapter in our ministry story by providing the funds to build the Lucille and Leo Kaoffe Center for Advancement. This chapter started with a phone call asking what we would do with $750,000. God has been so good to us. The amazing education and resources that were available to our women at Patsy's Place were now opened up to other women who were post-offenders or at risk for addiction and incarceration. The Center for Advancement provides GED classes, a computer lab, classrooms, and an emergency pantry for food, clothing, and hygiene items. The pantry became an important resource during COVID when many women were unable to work. Educational classes were being offered each month on subjects like job prep, healthcare resources, and Bible studies. The Center for Advancement suspended our evening classes for much of 2020, but provided assistance with food and job searches. Last year during COVID, 226 visits were made to the emergency pantry. Our Patsy's Place women attend their daily classes at the Center for Advancement. Sometimes the classes are emotionally draining. Our women are able to process what they are learning while walking through the garden that is attached to the center. This organic garden not only provides food for Patsy's Place, but also for the surrounding neighborhood. The 7th Street community is a food desert, but our participants, neighbors, and volunteers are able to benefit from growing organic vegetables and also receive therapeutic benefits from the tranquil setting of the garden. Well, that's a quick look at what Sharing Hope Ministry does. Now I want to tell you what you can do, how you can help rewrite the stories of the women that we serve. For many of you who know me, you know that Sharing Hope has played a key role in rewriting my story. When I was in charge of the pen, there were many dark chapters and struggles along the way. I suffered from a drug addiction that landed me in prison, and I was incarcerated for some time. But Sharing Hope came along and helped me rewrite my story. I celebrate 21 years of sobriety because of this ministry. That's 21 years of giving back to the community, 21 years of serving Christ. Now, I will tell you, it hasn't all been rainbows and unicorns along the way. But without the valleys, we don't realize when we're on the mountaintop. For me, 2021 has been the most difficult year that I've been through since getting out of prison. In January, my mom passed away, and I felt like I had lost my purpose at the time. But I realized that it's through Sharing Hope Ministry that I still have a purpose, and that purpose is to help women rewrite their stories, just as Sharing Hope helped me rewrite mine. Now that's where you come in. We can't do this without the financial support of other people. We need help from donors just like you that will help us fund what we do here, all aspects of our program, sending Bibles, Bible studies, feeding the women at Patsy's Place, providing hygiene items, and providing the educational resources we need at the Center for Advancement. Now, we know everyone's story is different. What you may be called to do for the ministry might not look like what someone else is called to do. Many of us are called to give financially to Sharing Hope Ministry. My mom used to say that God gave her an abundance so that she could pass that along. Maybe many of you are like my mom and want to give out of the abundance that you have. If so, I encourage you to check out our links so you can give monthly or make a one-time donation. We can even make it easy for you and set up an auto draft from your bank. Maybe you don't feel led to give financially, but you want to support this ministry. There are many ways you can support us. Just providing monthly supplies. You can imagine how much toilet paper a house full of women can go through in 1 month. We need those things as well as educational supplies for the center. We also need volunteers. We have many people who volunteer on our jail teams, volunteer to teach, or volunteer here in the office to send out Bibles and Bible studies to the women who request them. So maybe you're led to volunteer. We can use you in that capacity as well. The important thing is ask yourself, is God telling you that Sharing Hope is a part of your story? And if so, look for ways that you can help us. Maybe that's financially, maybe that's providing supplies, Or maybe that's just being one of our incredible volunteers. If you want to learn more about the ministry and more ways you can help, see the link about taking a tour of the facilities or sign up for a lunch and learn. We're happy to come talk to Bible study groups or life groups who may be interested in learning more about the ministry and serving us. The women that we serve here at Sharing Hope are allowing God to rewrite their stories. They know that there will be potholes and roadblocks and detours along the way, but they also know that God, in His grace and mercy and love, will help them turn the pages to new chapters of their story, a new life He has called him to. The same is true for this ministry. We know that canceled fundraisers, changed plans, or a crazy pandemic cannot harm the impact of Sharing Hope that God has willed. The incredible story of Sharing Hope Ministry will continue, and with your help, the next chapters can be the most exciting. Won't you be a part of our story?
I was caught up in an addiction in a life that I hated, but I couldn't stop on my own. I started praying to God for a way out. God answered my prayers with a 3-month jail sentence. While there, I had lots of time to think and surrender my life and my will over to God. With God's grace and mercy, He led me to Patsy's place. Since I've walked through these doors, I've grown closer to God, and the evidence shows all over my life. He is slowly rebuilding me into a better me. I now live a sober life that is both rewarding and challenging. I went from hopeless to hopeful. My name is Dagny. God is rewriting my story, and I am a child of God.
On May 3rd, 2019, I was rescued. For years I had been dealing with brokenness. I was so lost. I turned to drugs to numb out the feeling, but with time my hurt grew worse. I started looking for approval, love, and a sense of identity in all the wrong people, when all along my Heavenly Father was there, always, waiting for me with arms wide open, ready to embrace me in love. I didn't know that then. Jesus left the 99 sheep to rescue me, to lead me back to Him, and for that I am truly grateful. My name is Jamie. God is rewriting my story, because I was created for greatness.
My rescue. My moment of surrender and rescue came at a point of nowhere to hide, nowhere to find comfort, and nowhere to turn. It seemed like the longest ride, the ride that brought me to the road I needed and longed for. The road I traveled was rough, pothole infested, fast, and ill-tempered. I had no more regrets or sorrows for where I was headed and what was to come. My choices, decisions, and actions that had taken me to a place of my own will and desires, which in return left me alone, desperate, and broken. I was the driver of my disastrous behavior. The day I was rescued, I became the backseat rider with an intervened black and white chauffeur. All I can remember is seeing the world pass me by and feeling numb or done. I was tired, exhausted, and surrenderless. That was the very moment I began to ask God for guidance, mercy, forgiveness, and grace. I didn't want to do this alone anymore, and I needed help. I knew that day that He was my passenger and that He would be the driver of my new beginning. I no longer wanted to live by my will but His, because my desires weren't ever going to lead me to my God-given destination, and I sure wouldn't know how to get there without Him. I know not what the future holds, but I know who holds the future. My name is Veronica, and God is rewriting my story for glory.
My story begins on May 2nd, 2013. That is the day I lost my mother to a brain tumor, and later that night, my husband beat me to an inch of my life, and I felt all alone. I turned to meth to numb all the pain. My marriage fell apart as we both fell into our addiction. In 2014, my daughter and I finally got away. Things slowly crumbled under my feet. I had to give my daughter to her father, then I ran wild. In December of 2015, I found out I was pregnant and stayed in my addiction until March of 2016. My dad found out I was pregnant and let me move into his house. That August, I had a baby boy. After a year, my father told me that my kids and I could no longer stay with him, so we had to go. Once again, I dropped my daughter off with her father, and my son and I lived in my truck. I got back into my addiction really bad and was spiraling out of control. Suicide with my 1-year-old crossed my mind a lot. That's when God started calling out to me from random places, but I just wouldn't listen. December of 2017, I met a man who committed a crime and lost everything. I went to prison in 2019, and while I was incarcerated, my father passed away. God came calling again, and this time I listened. I understand now I need Him in everything I do. His love is much bigger, and the people He has brought into my life are amazing. I am so thankful for Patsy's place and everything I'm learning here. with all the love and support given to me, that on this day, September 2nd, my mother's 67th birthday, is so much easier to bear. My name is Tammy, and God is rewriting my story because I'm worth it.
I grew up in survival mode with both my parents gone working all the time. At an early age, I got into the wrong crowd and got hooked on drugs. By the age of 18, I was in prison. When I was released, I did good for about 9 years. I went to Vista College to become a phlebotomist. Then a traumatic experience happened, and I ran back to drugs to hide my pain. My life quickly fell apart. The only thing I cared about was my next high. At the age of 28, I was back in prison. It was there I finally surrendered my life to Jesus, and He delivered me from my drug addiction. While in prison, God put Patsy's place on my heart to go upon release. Once again, God came through for me. Every day is such a blessing, and I appreciate my life. And today, I walk every day with God by my side. I have been reunited with my son and my parents. My goal in life is to help troubled teens that are going through what I went through. With my support system in place, I know that I will succeed in life. My name is Lexi, and God is rewriting my story because I am His precious daughter.
I was in a very abusive marriage. I was totally dependent on him with 2 boys ages 3 and 5. When I finally got away from him, he took my boys and ran off to Mexico. That was when my life went out of control. I started using meth to cover my pain of losing my family. The next thing I know, I am running drugs and money from coast to coast, which landed me 3 years in prison. One good thing about that is my sobriety. I surrendered my life to God and started my walk with Him, which led me to Patsy's place. Every day here is a blessing. I learn more and more about God's grace, mercy, forgiveness, and His salvation. My name is Carla. God is rewriting my story, and today, after 17 years, He has restored my relationship with my children.
My hope for my future. I was so terrified, my shoulders sagged, my head was always down. Everything about me felt lifeless. I was used and abused. Everywhere I went, people took advantage of me. As I took hit after hit, drink after drink, I lost myself more and more in this insane addiction. My flesh and blood would cry out for help, not knowing what to do. When all comes tumbling down around me, God plans a detour in my life. I thought, not again am I in this cold, lonely jail cell looking at doing time, yet once again. As the anger, bitterness, shame, and guilt set in, having nowhere to run or turn to, I decided to turn to God. Because of His unfailing love for me, I have a hope and a future here at Patsy's place. My name is Angela. God is rewriting my story because of His unfailing grace and mercy.
Hopeless to hope-filled. At a time not long ago, I was totally hopeless. I believed I was a total failure and a huge disappointment to everyone. My life was a mess, completely out of control, and in utter chaos. Drugs and crime had me filled with shame and regrets. I hated myself and the mess I'd made out of my life. I knew there had to be more to life. There had to be a better way. I tried to change but failed repeatedly. When I could no longer stand, I hit my knees and I cried out to God, "Please help me, Lord, whatever it takes." He set me still in prison for 5 years where I could really get to know Him and come to have a relationship with Him. During that time, He led me to Patsy's place where I could receive guidance to become the woman that God created me to be. And for this life-changing opportunity, I will be eternally grateful. My name is Janetta, and God is rewriting my story, and I am a hope-filled child of God.
Drug addiction has consumed my life longer than I cared to admit. After a life-changing event in 2007, I was elated that I had finally found sobriety. Then in March of 2015, I lost someone very special to me, and once again, my life spiraled out of control. I relapsed, and my addiction was once again controlling my life. In February of 2020, I was sent to prison for a crime committed to support my habit. I knew it was time to do some serious soul searching, and although God has always been a part of me, I was not actively seeking Him because I was living in the sinful darkness. I then cried out to God and began a journey full of God's forgiveness that taught me He must come first and I was loved unconditionally. I now have a sober life thanks to God in Patsy's place and a new self with new beginnings. My name is Kara. This is God rewriting my story for eternity.
This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long.